it was basically still in that era of boys don't cry, push your feelings down, men don't have emotions, they don't talk about these things. This is the part that, like, I'm still in therapy, I still go through this stuff and work through this stuff, process it, and it's challenging too. For me, I think that undertone was, oh, we don't really express our emotions that effectively or at all, and therefore I take that to mean that I can't express my emotions either.
Unsolicited Perspectives Podcast. Episode clip.
Take me back to growing up. You're from Boston. Take me back to what it was like growing up in Boston, your early life, and the signs of how men are supposed to handle their emotions growing up in Boston and being a youth.
Yeah, so I think I want to attack this at 3 quick levels.
Okay.
So we'll go first on the societal level.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I grew up in the 90s, in the 2000s, but formative years, you know, we'll say 98 to 2005, something like that, you know. And in 1999, whatever year you want to pick out of that timeline, the world was pretty different. You know, there's no social media. The internet wasn't really a big thing. There's no influencers and all that. And so back then, the milieu of growing up in that environment, right, it was basically still in that era of boys don't cry, push your feelings down, men don't have emotions, they don't talk about these things. So that was the society-wide level, right? Then I'll move down to the Boston level to just answer this question specifically is, you know, people will still say, and obviously it's changed a little bit, but people will often say that living in the Northeast kind of hardens you because the winter is really tough, and there's a lot of comedians and famous people that come out of the Northeast, and they all have that little bit of ruggedness / a-hole vibe to them, you know? And so with that is like, oh, you know, these guys or men in general in Boston, we get through the hard winters. We kind of, you know, we have a little edge to us. We don't like life that much kind of thing. We don't talk about the difficulties. Maybe we drink, maybe we go to the boys' clubs, whatever. That was definitely there as well, growing up in that of just, again, like, hey, I'm hearing these messages or absorbing these messages of like, you know, struggle on, get through, but don't talk about it. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, you know, growing up in my own family, and, you know, this is the part that, like, I'm still in therapy, I still go through this stuff and work through this stuff, process it. And it's challenging too, where it's like, you know, would everybody in my family agree with this? They might not, but I think for my specific immediate family, grew up in a place where, you know, we didn't talk about emotions a lot, and we also didn't have like too many difficult conversations. So as a kid, right, like, yeah, you observe your parents' behavior and you also hear what they say, but you absorb everything that they do and don't do as well. Mm-hmm. And with a lot of that is like, I don't say the word subliminal in a bad way. I just mean there's an undertone there, right, that you pick up on. And so for me, I think that undertone was, oh, we don't really express our emotions that effectively or at all, and therefore I take that to mean that I can't express my emotions either. And I think all of those things came together to create a product where it's like, ooh, that's not a great environment for mental health.
So when you say don't show emotions or don't show emotions properly, what specifically are you talking about? So for instance, I grew up in the 90s as well. By the time I was in the 2000s, I was in college. It was a different time for me. But in the 90s, I did grow up, and I remember the music I listened to, hip hop, right? Switched over from what I call happy rap into hardcore rap, where before we were dancing at the beginning of the generation, and then we couldn't even dance anymore, right? So the expression of joy was just different. The only thing we could really express was anger. In your growing up, what were some of the emotions that you looked at and say, well, these are emotions that are deemed worthy for me to express?
Yeah, it's a really good question. What I would say is, I think the positive emotions were all well and good, and I think that there was an air of sort of like the positive thinking movement, the new self, the new thought kind of movement of law of attraction, think positive, celebrate your wins and all that. And that's great. I think you need a healthy balance of that kind of thing in your life. I know that in my own home life, like we really struggled to go to the other end and talk about the negative emotions, right? So just as a like one-off example, right, is like my brother would come home from school or maybe he did one day and something didn't go right. You know, maybe he asked a girl out and he got rejected, or the girl that he liked went off with somebody else or whatever. And he'd come home and he'd be like venting and fuming and maybe slam a door or whatever. And instead of being like, oh, he's communicating something through that behavior, let's talk about it. I remember me and my dad, we'd just sit around and we'd be like, we don't know what's going on and we don't know what to do about it. We don't know how to handle it. So we didn't really have the language and the textbook or the tool book for making sense of those emotions. And even if we were like, yeah, we would be willing to talk about them, the environment didn't quite support it, right? Again, I just don't know if we had all the tools for it. So I think for me, I'm like looking back, I'm like, yeah, we made room for the positive. We either didn't make room for the negative, or we didn't want to, or we didn't know how to handle it. And when you kind of don't actually talk about those things, then problems start to arise over time.
Yeah. I often talk about this when discussing relationships between parents and their children. And I'm not a parent, but I am somebody's child. So I do have a right to say what I'm about to say. And I think oftentimes parents don't think about giving their kids safe spaces. My question to you is, even if the space was safe for your brother, for instance, in that particular situation, would he even know how to verbalize what it is going? Would he feel comfortable? Would he know how to verbalize it? And would he feel comfortable sharing that type of vulnerability that a girl rejected me, or I didn't make the basketball team, or coach decided to bench me and I'm not going to be pitching the next game? Would he know, or you know, how to express that if you were given the safe spaces to express it?
I got two things I want to mention on that. Is one, when we say safe space, right, I think the challenge that we faced growing up was like, I think my parents would probably be like, what do you mean we didn't give you that space, right? We absolutely did. You know, you could have come and talked to us about anything. I would say they didn't provide always the model, like that role of modeling that behavior, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And then that means that, let's say my brother and I probably don't get the tools to be able to talk about those things if the space were there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Join the conversation and follow the Unsolicited Perspectives podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your audio podcasts.